If you have a 6 or 7 figure portfolio spread across different account types, I need to talk to you about one of the most powerful yet overlooked strategies that could save you tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes over your lifetime. I'm talking about asset location. Now, you've probably heard of asset allocation, which is how you divide your money between stocks and bonds. But asset location, that's about which specific accounts you place those investments in. And here's the thing, the difference between getting this right and getting it wrong can cost you more than bad investment picks ever will. As a certified financial planner, I'm going to walk you through exactly how this strategy works and why it matters so much for your retirement. So let's start with a simple question. What's the difference between asset allocation and asset location? So asset allocation is about your overall investment mix. So let's imagine you want an 80% stock and 20% bond portfolio. That's your allocation. But asset location asks a different question. Where should those specific investments live? Should your bonds go in your IRA, your Roth, or your taxable brokerage account? Here's why this matters. Different types of investments are taxed differently by the IRS. Some generate ordinary income tax at rates as high as 37%. Others produce long-term capital gains taxed at 0, 15, or 20%. And some accounts, like your Roth IRA, let that money grow completely tax-free. The goal of asset location is to match your investments to the right account type based on how they're taxed. This is a completely hypothetical example, but if you have $500,000 in retirement savings and you optimize asset location properly, you could potentially save $50,000 or more in lifetime taxes compared to someone who just randomly distributes their investments across accounts. So let's talk about bonds and REITs, two investments that are considered tax inefficient. Bonds generate interest income. So every dollar of interest you earn is taxed at ordinary income at your full marginal tax rates. So if you're in the 24% or 32% tax bracket, that's a big chunk going to Uncle Sam every single year. REITs, or real estate investment trusts, are even more problematic. Here's why. They're required by law to distribute at least 90% of their taxable income to shareholders. And those distributions, well, they're almost always taxed as ordinary income, not qualified dividends. Here's the key insight. Holding bonds and REITs in a taxable brokerage account means you're paying taxes on that income every single year, even if you reinvest those distributions. Over decades, that tax drag adds up significantly. This is why, as a retirement income certified professional, I always tell clients with 6 or 7 figure portfolios, these assets belong in tax deferred accounts like an IRA or 401k. Now let's flip the script and talk about tax efficient investments. These are the assets you want in your taxable brokerage account. Think broad market index funds, ETFs, total stock market funds, growth stocks. Why are these tax efficient? Well, for 2 big reasons. First, index funds and ETFs typically have extremely low turnover. What that means is they're not constantly buying and selling, which means they don't generate many taxable distributions year after year. The IRS only taxes realized gains when you actually sell. So with a low turnover index fund or ETF, your money compounds largely untaxed until you decide to sell. Second, when you do eventually sell, if you hold that investment for more than a year, you pay favorable long-term capital gains tax rates. So for many retirees, that could be no tax at all or 15%, which is substantially lower than the ordinary income tax rates of 22% to 37% that we see a lot of the time. There's another huge benefit to holding tax efficient investments in taxable accounts, and that's tax loss harvesting. Let's imagine the market drops and your ETF or index fund is down. You can sell it, realize the loss to offset other gains that you have in the current year, or up to $3,000 of ordinary income, and then immediately buy a similar fund. You stay invested, but you just created a tax benefit for yourself. Now, here's where asset location gets very powerful. So your Roth IRA should be reserved exclusively for your highest expected growth investments. So I'm talking about large cap stocks, small cap, could be emerging markets, aggressive growth funds, anything with potential for significant long-term appreciation. Now, why is this? because every dollar of growth in a Roth IRA is 100% tax-free when you withdraw it in retirement. So let's look at a hypothetical example. Imagine you invest $10,000 in a large cap growth ETF in your Roth IRA, and over the next 30 years, it grows to $100,000. When you withdraw that $100,000 in retirement, you pay zero taxes. That same investment in a traditional IRA, that $100,000 would be fully taxable as ordinary income when you withdraw it, potentially costing you $22,000 to $37,000 in taxes, depending on your tax bracket. That is the power of putting your highest growth assets in your Roth IRA. I often see clients make the mistake of putting conservative investments like bonds in their Roth. And that's just backwards. Bonds have lower expected returns, so you're not maximizing the tax-free growth benefit. Save your Roth for the investments that have the highest potential to compound aggressively over time. Now let's tie all this together with a practical example. This is a hypothetical scenario for illustration purposes. Let's imagine you have a $600,000 portfolio and you want an 80% stock and 20% bond allocation in your overall portfolio. So that would come to $480,000 in equities and $120,000 in bonds. Here's how you'd implement asset location. First, your traditional IRA and your 401k hold $200,000. This is where all your bonds or tax inefficient investments would go. Say your Roth IRA has $100,000. This is where your most aggressive investments would live. Again, large cap growth funds, broad-based index funds, things similar. Your taxable brokerage account has $300,000. This is where you would put your tax efficient equity funds, typically ETFs or index funds. So if you notice what just happened, your overall portfolio is still 80% stocks and 20% bonds, but now you've strategically placed each investment in the account type that minimizes your lifetime tax bill. The goal is to look at your portfolio as a whole, not account by account. If your goal is 80% equities and 20% bonds, you can position your accounts tax efficiently while still maintaining that 80-20 mix across your entire portfolio. This is what I help clients create clarity around at Eagle Financial Planning, designing a strategic plan to optimize every dollar for tax efficiency. Let me share a few mistakes I see all the time. First, I see people holding high dividend stocks in taxable accounts when they are in high tax brackets. If those dividends aren't qualified, and even if they are, you're creating annual taxable income when you could have sheltered that in a tax deferred account. Second, people forget all about the step up in basis. When you pass away, assets in your taxable brokerage account actually get a step up in cost basis. What this means is your beneficiaries can inherit them with little to no capital gains tax. That makes taxable accounts more valuable for legacy planning than many people even realize. Here's the reality. Asset location isn't a one-time decision. As your portfolio grows, as tax laws change, and as your retirement timeline shifts, you need to continually reassess where your investments are located. This is why the ongoing process of financial planning is so much more valuable than just creating a plan once and hoping for the best. If you're managing a 6 or a 7-figure portfolio and you want to make sure you're not leaving money on the table, asset location should 100% be a core part of your retirement strategy. It's not flashy, but it's one of the most effective ways to reduce your lifetime tax liability and keep more of your hard-earned money working for you. For more smart planning for a successful retirement, make sure you subscribe. And if you ever need help with this at Eagle Financial Planning, these are the exact things that we help clients create clarity around. Feel free to book a free retirement strategy session. The link is in the description below. Let's make sure your portfolio is positioned for success.